Hi yogis, I'm Tovah and today's class is Happy Hips episode number 2. And if you haven't already checked out episode number 1, be sure to watch out for it. I will put a link in the description to today's video. So you guessed it, we are working on hip opening, which is so fantastic, really for everybody. If you spend a lot of time seated, if you do a lot of fitness or athletic pursuits, if you're somebody who has some back pain and some knee pain, some shoulder pain, oftentimes that is stemming from or being complicated by tightness through the hip region. So we're focusing on the back of the hip, which is the glutes, and the front of the hip, which is the hip flexors. So we're gonna get right down to it. We're gonna start today's class lying on your back, on your mat, and we're gonna come into this tented knee position. So just get comfortable. Take your feet a little bit wider than shoulder width, and then let your knees just tent together and rest against one another here. And if it feels uncomfortable, just shift your feet around. They might need to be a little closer, they might need to be a little wider. And you could also stick a cushion between your thighs here if your knees have trouble just coming together. And this position really allows your psoas to begin to release. And our psoas is one of our deepest hip flexing muscles. And it's often one that is the cause of a lot of tightness, a lot of tension, and it doesn't get very much opportunity to really relax. So this position that we're starting in today isn't really a stretch, it's really a release and total relaxation for the psoas. So let your arms go wherever they're comfortable. I might invite you to close your eyes. And just taking the first few moments of class here to tune into your breath. Begin to breathe a bit deeper. Start to quiet your mind. Put down your to-do lists. And just allow your body some time to start to relax, to ease your way into relaxation. And we're gonna stay in this position for about another minute. And know that this is a place that you could easily incorporate into your daily life. So maybe you spend a couple of minutes lying in bed like this in the morning or before you drift off to sleep at night. Maybe both. To really help the tightness in your hips subside. And if you do have a lot of tightness, it's gonna take time. This is something that you need to work on almost every day. Perfect, and we're slowly gonna transition from this place. And if you do have a small block or a cushion, I'll get you to use that. A yoga bolster would work great as well. So always nice to have a few props handy here. So we're gonna take the block, and just being very, very gentle here, we're gonna keep it on the lowest setting. So if you're using a cushion, just make sure that it's not too thick of one. And you're gonna put that right underneath your lower back here. So more kind of near the edge of your bum than in the really bendy part of your lower back. So kind of where your waistband would be and then lower. And you can just adjust it here. You'll find the right spot. And then from here, I want you to bring your right knee in and let your left leg just relax down. You can be a little bit active here, pulling the toes back, or just let the leg completely go. You could use a strap to hold your knee here if this was a hard reach for you. And we're just gently, with the rise of the block, letting our hip open as the leg drops into that space. So by adding that little bit of a lift, we're just getting a very gentle stretch across the front of the hip. So just really starting to ease into our hips today. And this should feel mildly uncomfortable. So you're feeling a bit of a stretch, but you're not feeling overwhelmed by the stretch. So about a 7 out of 10 is perfect. And if you're at all unsure, that's always the sign to back off a little bit. So we just want to tiptoe around our edge in the stretch, not pushing too hard, because that pushing to stretch deeper actually makes us go the other way. It causes your muscles to tighten and tense up instead of release and relax. So just settle in here for a few more breaths. Good, and we're slowly gonna come out of this here. You can tuck your knees into your chest. It might feel better for you to stretch both legs out, and please feel free to come off the block if that's what you need to do in between. And then when you're ready, we're gonna switch to the opposite side. And of course, you can hold your left knee with 2 hands. You can hold it with just 1 here. You could use your strap. As we just very gently begin to open up through the front of the hip on the opposite side. Remembering to breathe deeply. staying here for just a couple of more breaths. Perfect, and again, you're gonna release from this position. Just move slow, take your time here. Coming off the block when you're ready. And you can just set it aside. And do whatever intuitively feels right for you now. So whether that's tucking your knees in, maybe you wanna stretch out into a big ball, or just find a little bit of side to side movement. And then as we prepare to move into the next position, you're gonna roll over onto your tummy. So we're gonna work a little bit more on the front of the hip here. So let's come into this lying quad stretch. So you're gonna draw your right leg back, like it's kicking your bum, and you're gonna grab it with your hand here. And if this is challenging for you to reach it, then of course you're gonna use your yoga strap to loop your foot. And then just resting your forehead down on your hand. You could rest it on a cushion or a block here, or feel free to turn your head to one side. You want to aim to push your hips down into the mat. So not letting your bum lift up here or letting there be a gap there. And if you're a little bit tight in this position, that's where your body's gonna wanna go to try to get away from the stretch. So really be cognizant of that. It's better to back off a little bit, let your leg come out a little farther so that your hip can stay down than it is to pull away from the stretch. And we're not staying here too terribly long. If you wanted to come up onto your elbow a little bit here for the last couple of breaths, as we start to come into a little bit of a back bend and lift our chest, that's gonna deepen the stretch or the line of pull up across the entire front chain. So it's not just our hips. This line of stretch really starts to reach up in through the chest and shoulders as well as we come into a little bit of a back bend here. But it's okay if this is not for you. Please do feel free to stay with your head down if that feels better. Perfect, releasing the leg. Let yourself just come all the way flat for a breath or two. And now let's move into that lying quad stretch position on the opposite side. Breathing deeply as you settle into the posture or the asana. sending your breath to any place that feels a little bit tight here. And as we come into our last few breaths, maybe pressing up a little bit into a small back bend here. Good, and release from the posture. And again, maybe just coming flat for a couple of breaths or moving into any restful place. And now we're going to start to move slowly, coming into a low lunge position. So for this, I do really like to use some cushioning underneath my knees. You can double up your mat, that's always an option. But if you have a cushion, a bolster, a blanket folded up, a towel, that works perfectly here. So as I get ready to come into this lunge position, I'm just gonna slide back a little bit. I'm gonna put my right knee down on the block or cushion, and I'm gonna step forward with my left leg. So your aim here is to split the legs as much as you can. So you're ideally aiming for a diagonal line from where your knee is to where your hip is, if you drew a straight line down from both. Now, if you're more tight through the hips, you might see that it looks something like this, where it's fairly straight up and down, and that's always okay. If that's your edge, if that's enough of a stretch for you, you're gonna stay right there. If you're here and you don't feel like you're getting a strong stretch through the front of the hip, that's where you want to step the front leg forward more and slide the back leg backward a little farther so that you get more of a split. So feeling like the front of the hip is being drawn down or pulled down, kind of on a diagonal line down towards your mat. And you do want to aim to keep your lower back neutral here. So for some people, coming all the way down here is really going to cause them to come into this kind of rounded back position, which is not really what we're shooting for. So if you're in this position and you can keep your back neutral and this feels good, then stay here. If it doesn't, you can bring your hands up onto your thigh, or you could go in between and you could use your block and rest your hand on it here. So just venture into the right amount of stretch for you. You can definitely let your front leg flare a little bit to the outside edge. And that will just give you a little bit of stretch through your groin as well as allowing a little bit more room for your hips to really sink into that pocket area. So if you're too straight on, you'll notice that you're kind of at a stopgap because you're stuck on your own thigh. Whereas if you wiggle your foot over to the side, all of a sudden you'll find just a little bit more movement. So if you're unsure, if you're in that kind of place where you're getting stuck, try walking the foot to the outside edge of your mat a little bit more and see how it feels. And if there's some room or some space to be had there, you'll notice it right away. Perfect, and we're gonna switch sides here. So just take your time as you come out. Changing your cushioning position. And remember that the left and right side might not behave exactly the same here. So usually we have one side that's a little bit stiffer or a little bit tighter. So just go gentle here. And just readjusting as much as you need. Our aim is to be still, but finding a little bit of movement to just help you get into a better stretch is always okay. It's the fidgeting and the unnecessary movement that we want to try to quell in this type of yoga practice. And that really allows us to turn inward, and sometimes that's scary. You're alone with your thoughts, with nothing else really happening. And that can be challenging, but embrace that challenge as you work towards dealing with whatever feelings are coming up for you. Being sure not to overstretch here. This can be a challenging position, and we're not going to stay in this one too long because it is difficult. And you want to release and relax here. Taking one more nice, big, deep breath. And as you exhale, start to exit the posture. Perfect. And we're going to use our block again as we come down onto our back. And we use the block underneath our hips at the beginning of class. And now we're going to come into kind of that same position, but we're going to do full supported bridge. So here's the opportunity, if you like to turn the block to a higher setting, to lift your hips a little bit higher. But of course, you could still always leave it on the lowest setting if that works for you. And then we're not tucking a knee in here. You're just going to let your legs go wherever's comfortable. That might be stretching your legs out. It might be leaving them bent. And just again, finding this really nice passive position. Your block is doing all of the work here. And if the block feels a little bit too hard, you could pad it with a pillow over top or a blanket, or feel free to use a bolster or some cushions instead of a block. Making sure that the block is not in the bendy part of your lower back, it's more down near the firm upper buttock area. Give into the block here. And this is another one of these positions that are quite restful, quite easy for the body. And so you could choose to stay here for a really extended period of time. Really as long as you like, as long as you're comfortable, you're still making space and everything is relaxing, not tensing. And as long as body parts don't start to fall asleep. So if you start to notice that your foot is falling asleep or your fingers are tingling, that's always a sign to come out of a long extended hold. And as you take one last big deep breath, on your exhale, begin to exit from the posture. So you can press into your feet here, lift up just a little bit higher, and allow your bum to come down to the mat. And here's where you may want to tuck into a ball, you may want to stretch out straight, you might just want to rest in the middle. But taking a couple of breaths of doing whatever feels best for your body at this juncture. And we've spent the majority of today's class focusing on the front of the hip. So we're just going to finish with a little bit of a stretch for our glutes today, the back side of the hip, as we come into happy baby pose or happy baby stretch. So lifting your feet to the ceiling, pull your toes back to your shins, and then reach up and pull down from your feet. Could be your ankles or the back of your thighs here, whatever you can comfortably reach. And if it does feel good for you to rock a little bit side to side, please allow your body to do that. Not only is this a great glute stretch or buttock stretch, but it also is very wonderful for people who have lower back pain or anyone suffering from sciatic nerve issues. This is a position that I would recommend doing often. Good, and we're slowly going to come out of this position. And then I'm going to leave you to rest in a position called constructive rest. So this can be a great position to use for Savasana or anytime. Again, this is a really deep release in through the deep muscles in your hips. So I'm going to use my fireplace, but you could use a chair or you could stack up about 4 cushions. You want it high enough so that when you're lying down and you put your legs up on it, that your knees are bent about 90 degrees. So just take a moment to find what you need to get into that position. And it's really a perfect height for me to just let my legs really relax here. So once you get yourself into this constructive rest position, let your arms be comfortable. Maybe you even want to cover yourself with a blanket. And this is a posture you can really spend an extended time in. Allow your whole body to relax. Let your hips release deeply. And if you are suffering from a lot of hip issues, hip tightness, back pain, this is a position I would recommend spending 10 minutes in at least every single day. It can work wonders. But please do enjoy this position. Stay as long as you like. And when you are ready to come out of the posture, consider giving this video a thumbs up. Leave me a comment. Let me know how you enjoyed today's class, how your yoga journey is going, or if there's other classes you'd love to see on my channel. But please don't feel rushed here. Take this time and enjoy. Namaste.